everyone, and welcome to another episode of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is Summer Rain.
My name is Patrick Knisley.
My name is David Howe, and boy, oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a very special guest joining us right here on episode 225 of the podcast from his own podcast called Some of My Friends Read Comics. Returning to the show, we got the wonderful Vincent Goodwin on the show. How's it going, Vince?
It's going great. Thank y'all for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Yes. Thank you, Vincent, for joining us. We're very excited to have you on today to talk about the different eras and leaderships that we have seen come and go through Nintendo and what we can speculate about that with Nintendo's future. We've also got some more news to talk about. It feels like we just got done talking about a bunch of direct leaks and rumors, but we've got even more, plus just even more Switch 2 or maybe the Super Switch news to discuss. But before we get into all of that, how has everybody been? How's this past week been?
Pretty good. I have had a nice, chill weekend for the most part. I played a lot of Starfield. I'll talk about that at the end of the show. I'm really enjoying that game. What else? I did some other things that I'm forgetting. And then I also saw the movie Bottoms last night.
Oh, yeah.
Which I really enjoyed. I thought that movie was super fucking funny. It was a lot more like straight up absurd than I was expecting it to be. It was nice to see a comedy that's just total balls to the wall insanity from start to finish. So I really recommend everybody go see Bottoms. That's
the one with Marshawn Lynch, right?
Yeah, he's in it. It's Io Edebiri and Rachel Sennott.
Okay.
And yeah, that was really good. Also finished up watching How To with John Wilson, which I really enjoyed. That's probably one of my favorite shows now. I'm really glad everybody has convinced me to watch that show. Excellent stuff. What about y'all? How are you doing, Patrick? Let's go with you.
Well, okay. I'm doing okay. I started my new old job since we last spoke, which is okay. I was living the life before. And also I kind of like, I don't know, going from San Japan straight to it, I was just exhausted. Like I was we stayed in Airbnb and walked to it a bunch back and forth. And so like, I just was really wiped out, and I think just adjusting to new schedule and stuff. And then our AC went out. So, it wasn't a very relaxing weekend as I scrambled to figure things out. It's back up. We're okay. But
just in time for the heat wave to break.
Yeah. Just exactly.
Just in time for highs of 95 as opposed to 95. Yep.
So thankful for that though. But yes, so it's been just like a lot of going, and I'll get back in the routine as the weeks go, I'm sure. But yeah.
Oh, dude, it's like taking just like a week off for a vacation or something and going back to work is a huge like adjustment period. So like taking this like year and a half or however long you've been away from this job
2 years,
off.
right?
2 years.
Over 2 years.
Yeah, there you go. Like going back to the workforce, that's got to be pretty trippy and difficult.
It is, especially because I'm going back to the same place. And that's like,
oh, so you're physically in an office.
Yeah. And
that's a lot.
That's
we just had to go back to the office. Like I was cranky. So just be very gracious with you and your family and your kids.
Yes. I have. Anyway, it's an adjustment, and it's not forever. So
yeah.
Yes.
What about you, Summer? Today's a very special day.
Ooh.
Dear listener, it's my birthday today.
Yay!
Happy birthday!
It's Summer's birthday today.
So by the time that you're listening to this, my birthday was 2 days ago. But you can still tell me happy birthday if you're listening now, because it's my birthday week.
It's your birthday year.
Thank you. Yes, we're in Virgo season, so you really do have until the 21st to tell me happy birthday.
There you go.
So I wasn't on the podcast last week because I was still in transit coming back from San Japan. So I do want to insert my little side of how San Japan went. And the thing that I really want to make sure that I talk about is, I know Patrick already got to talk about how things were for him, but I was just so so proud of you, Patrick, and getting as somebody who's been going to these for quite a while now. Like I've been going to conventions for 10 years and like the Indie Alley is something that I've always looked forward to. So to be able to like be good friends with someone and get to see them not only just like do it, but have the experience that you got to have, like to get you to to see you having like this great experience with your game, especially like I'm going to go ahead and say it in comparison to some of the other devs that were there.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Shots
I'm going to
fired.
go. Yeah, I'm going to say it because I'm proud. I'm going to have my dance mom moment and say how proud I am.
You were the prettiest
Patrick.
one up there, Patrick.
Please be careful because like I've been really like emotional. I'm like real weepy. You're already making me like
Good. We need an episode where you straight up. I've cried on an episode. You need to cry now.
I'm like borderline doing it. You're too kind because I was ready for you to talk about your shows I was guilty. I felt guilty after that episode where I was like, I don't think I talked about going to see Summer's show because what a asshole friend I am. You know, like
no, you were so.
And you are gushing.
You had your big.
Oh my God.
You had your big thing, but yes, I also. San Japan. So I hosted our variety show, the Down Low Geek show, our first time having it at San Japan, barring some technical issues with the third party company. So not throwing San Japan under the bus for this.
Was it the other devs in Indie Alley? Was it them?
Yes, they went out of their way to fuck up our show and to screw up our time so that so we did end up having to cut a few of our acts from the show. But like aside from that, all of the performers did a great job.
And so did Summer, who is a fucking sailor on stage, by the way. I was like,
do you swear a lot on stage?
Well, it's an 18 plus show.
Okay.
And
So,
yes is the answer to that. Because like I know Summer mostly from this, and you drop an F-bomb, but up there you're like, fuck you fucking fuck.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, well, we kind of try to show off as being like degenerates, like we're anime degenerates. So like if somebody's being kind of outspoken in the crowd, I'm gonna, outspeak them.
You did.
Yeah.
But I would also like to mention, like, we hosted our Fire Emblem panel, Fire Up Those Emblems, which I'm a huge fan of. That's always, they put us at 11:30 a.m. on Saturday, which Saturday is a great time slot, but it was a little early. But they put us in one of the bigger panel rooms on the second floor where most of PAX South used to be. And I made this quip at the beginning of the panel that I was like, man, here we are doing our video game panel, like back where like most of PAX used to be. It feels like we're back at PAX. And half of the audience like started vigorously nodding and they were like, rest in peace. And they knew what I was talking about with that. So that was... it was a lot of fun, and yes, got to see many Switch Heads on our way back from.
Oh yeah, that was nice to have a little meetup.
That was a lot of fun, and and the cosplay that I shared in the Discord, for those of you that are in Discord, we did end up winning an award for it. So on a whim, I was at Patrick's table when I got the text message about it, and I was like, "Gosh, this is so funny that this happened." So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the past week I've just also been recuperating. So Patrick now knows you get what's called post-con depression, where you're, coming down.
AKA COVID.
Yeah, well,
the PAX box.
It's the high levels of dopamine, right? And
Yeah,
you're like
I'm
go
just kidding,
go while you're there, and coming down from that. So my job is ramping up right now. So just. Getting back into that. And then that's me. I realize I talked a lot. So Vincent, I would love to hear from you how you're doing.
Well, I'm sure I can top having your birthday and having, winning con awards for Pokemon Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire costume.
You deserve it.
But congratulations, happy birthday.
Thank you.
I've just been listening to the new Olivia Rodrigo album like nonstop.
Okay.
I listened to it eight times today. It's the #1 album in America.
You pop punk fan? Yeah.
Yeah. And angry 20-year-old girl, it really unleashes in me. And I'm like prepping for my 4-year-old daughter to have like basically the Olivia Rodrigo experience. I'm prepping myself now. So,
so appropriate on our Eras episode that you open with Olivia Rodrigo.
Yeah, not to cast Taylor Swift under the bus, but it is better than Midnight.
Yeah.
But that's probably not better than 1989.
Bold claim, yeah.
Better than the other devs.
It's like Patrick and Olivia Rodrigo, and then like Taylor Swift and the other dev. No.
Dude, I bet fucking Matt is really regretting quitting the podcast right now. This is his kind of conversation.
Oh, he's a big Swiftie, isn't he?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
She's wonderful. I like 1989 a lot.
Hell
it's a good album.
Well, we'll move on.
We have fun here, folks.
We sure
do.
This
sounds like fun it is.
We did our episode last week on the Mario Wonder Direct and some September Direct speculation in light of that. Over on the Discord, we got lots of great comments. I don't know Jack either. The Huge, Vince, you, Swampy Southpaw, Steve Irwin, so many people. And the thing I think we have to mention is the sexy Shrek Crocs. As you said, Vince, I think.
Shrek is love. Shrek is life.
So there was a lot of good discussion in the Discord, including the sexy Shrek. So I apologize if I missed you. But over on YouTube, another comment from Eric, that there's been some Smash Bros. Speculation recently due to Amiibo restock happening. And I don't know that means anything, but thanks for pointing that out, Eric. And I hope it means something, but doubt it. But who knows? I haven't been following that. So, and then Matthew jumped into the YouTube to list the games in Clubhouse 51 Worldwide Classics.
No, we do not need to read all 51.
But they're listed there. I think
Mahjong.
Anyway.
Piano.
Tank.
Over on Instagram, Sprowlix2 said maybe we'll see Elebits in the potential direct.
Oh, shit.
Elebits was like a Konami game or something?
Yeah. It was like they were like little like electronic dudes, and you basically just walked around a house with your Wiimote and opened up doors and then like pointed at the little like bats. It was basically just destroying a house in a Wii game and then pointing at little dots that like ants that ran away.
Oh,
it was pretty fun.
Fucking good.
Sounds good.
A deep cut. Nice call, Sprowlix. If you two want to be shouted out, then definitely send us a note, make a comment on social media on one of our posts, and we'll try to shout you out. Also join the Discord because we have great conversation over there, and hop over to the YouTube. And if you're not watching there already, and hit the like and subscribe buttons.
Please watch this week because I came back from my birthday dinner and I've got my beautiful ho-oh dress on and I've got makeup to match.
Just gorgeous.
I was like, why are you shaking your head? You would disagree with me saying they should look at me?
No, I was just, it was just an
agreement.
Oh, is that the ho-oh
gesture?
Yes, this is from the reboot of the Pokemon collab with Black Milk. Yeah,
we're talking about that on Discord.
Oh,
join the Discord.
Join the Discord and buy Pokemon merchandise and clothing with me.
Well, we're going to talk about what's going on in Nintendo news and the video game news. First up, Charles Martinet. We heard that he's no longer the voice of Mario and so on. He is now a quote unquote Mario ambassador. They put out a short video to talk about it. Yeah, and it happened. What I think is funny though, in light, like I'm sure y'all saw this too, but like there was a video going around of Charles Martinet at a convention or something where he was like, I don't know what a Mario ambassador is. And then this video comes out where he clearly knows what a Mario ambassador is.
It's like when you get promoted and you're like, I don't know what my job is going to be. They told me it's important.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah, there was no new information in this video.
No.
And it also very much was like Miyamoto and Charles Martinet were in like different places. You know, I think, you know, they were never in like the same frame together, right? So I think these were recorded at different times. This makes me think even more that this was a pretty quick decision and that this was not something that has been planned for a while, right? Like, I don't know exactly, you know, because they're like, oh, there will be a video where they talk about it later. It's like, well, then they would have just released this video right away. You know what I mean? I think that there must have been some sort of end of contract and they had to make the announcement. And then they're like, well, we'll have you do a video or whatever. But there was like no new information. It was just them. It was like Charles Martinet like in the frame with Miyamoto just off camera with a gun pointed at him, be like, say the lines.
Right.
That's what it felt like to me. Yeah.
Because I thought like when they said it was like Miyamoto and him are gonna do a video, like they were like, oh, we have to get like our plane tickets together. Miyamoto's gonna have to meet him in person, and that didn't happen. So I don't know what their plan was.
Right.
But, yeah, it's all pretty strange. They didn't really go into too much more detail on like what the Mario ambassador means. He did say that he calls Miyamoto Papa, which I found cute. Strangely erotic, cute. I meant, but yeah, it was a nice. I don't know. It was a nice video. It was just kind of odd and unnecessary. I felt
it happened. Yeah,
I watched it. I smiled the whole time.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else to say. They still won't tell us who's voicing Mario now, so I guess we'll find out in a month and whatever change. But we also got some news about new games coming to NSO. These are some interesting deep cuts, right? Like a lot of these are non-English or never released in America games, right? Does anybody want to list these or explain? Does anybody know anything about any of these games? There's an NES, Super NES, Game Boy games. Specifically, we should say.
Yeah, I mean, out of the four of these, for NES, we're getting Joy Mech Fight, which is that's the one game that I'm aware of out of this. One of the characters is an assist trophy in Smash, which is kind of how
thing.
Yeah, and so it's like a 2D, it's like a fighting game for the NES, and it's actually a really cool game. So that's a really great addition. I'm excited that got added to NSO. I had not heard of Downtown Neketsu March Super Awesome Field Day, although I do love that title. It looks like it's like a River City Ransom spinoff, I suppose.
Yeah, so all the Kunio-kun characters of River City Ransom, they did a lot of sports games. So they're like in Dodgeball, Super Dodgeball Advance, you may know from the GBA.
That's right. Yeah.
Even the Game Boy World Cup game was like branded like a World Cup game, but it's absolutely in Japan was just like these like characters playing a soccer game. So like Mario Soccer, but Kunio-kun. And this one is from Carosetta says it was a story sequel to River City Ransom, which is a beat 'em up, but it's sports games. So I don't know. I guess it's like the Persona Strikers or the like Fire Emblem Warriors of
the
like
NES.
Changing the genre as it were.
Okay.
And it was already out in the Kunio-kun Double Dragon collection from a couple of years ago.
Okay, got it.
Then. So we were able to buy it a couple of years ago.
Well, yeah, that's another one of these Japanese games that is just coming to the English Nintendo Switch Online. That's also for NES. Kirby Star Stacker, which is a game I'd never actually heard of, which has jumped up on my radar of games I want to play.
Right,
I haven't played it yet, but yeah, it's like a match color Kirby puzzle game for the Super Nintendo. And then Quest for Camelot for the Game Boy was the final game. Really, out of all of these, this is all the other games being Japanese is kind of weird, but this is the weirdest edition, I think. It's like a licensed movie tie-in game made by Titus, who made Superman 64, not known for their quality. I think it got a 4 out of 10 and Game Informer or whatever in the reviews like back in the day. So I don't really know why this got added to Game Boy Color or, it just kind of looks like a Zelda clone that's not very good. But anyway, I mean, that's on Game Boy now, so I guess they're doing licensed games.
Because like Alone in the Dark was at least like visually interesting as like a Game Boy Color game that was like weird for a third person. I don't see what was anything special about Quest for Camelot, so I don't know.
They could get it.
Yeah, but I don't even know who owns Titus. Like that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably just one of these like super cheap bottom of the barrel IPs that they're able to get for essentially free for the service just to throw on. Yeah.
Well, we'll move on to talking a little bit more about Embracer Group. We've talked about them a lot over the last, year or two as they purchased and gobbled up a lot of different IPs and studios, including Gearbox Entertainment. And according to David's favorite journalist, Jason Schreier, Embracer is now looking to sell Gearbox. I don't think that there's been any like official thing happening. It's just that they are exploring trying to I guess is, we talked about they had a deal that didn't work out, and so they're trying to shed things. They've been closing studios, firing people, and it looks like they're trying to make some of their money back. Apparently, they bought the studio for $1.3 billion. Do you think they're going to be able to sell it for the same, or is there going to be a loss here?
No, that's going to be a loss. I mean, I think that when they bought them, they were probably at their most valuable. Borderlands 3 had probably just come out, and they were kind of riding high off of a lot of success, and not much has really happened since then. I think there's like a Borderlands movie coming out that might do well, and it's not like Borderlands is the only thing that they do at Gearbox. But yeah, I think that's probably going to be a net loss for them. But even if they can get this thing out at like, $1 billion or a little bit under, that'll bite into like at least a chunk of that $2 billion investment that they lost through the Saudi deal. But yeah, I don't know. It depends on who purchases them as well. But
yeah. Well, we'll see if, that's sort of a developing thing. I'm sure if they end up selling them or doing something with them, we'll have more to talk about in the coming weeks or months.
Yeah.
But persistent Nintendo rumor has popped up again that a Zelda movie is in development. This time a leaker who I'm not very familiar with, but known as My Time to Shine, apparently is saying that there is a live action Legend of Zelda movie that Universal is developing with Nintendo. What do we think? Do we think this has any credibility? Do y'all know anything about this My Time to Shine? Or is this just more sort of obvious guessing? And what do you think about live action? If we get a Zelda movie, what do you want it to be? Anybody? Nobody?
What about you, Summer? What do you think about this?
Groan.
I just thought we were done talking about this until it was going to be confirmed, which is why I'm like, how much do we buy into it? But it's like a random time for it to come out to be said again, right? But like, I feel like I'm having whiplash because I was ready for a goofy like
like Illumination Zelda.
Right? Which like could work. And I'm not against a live action Zelda either, but at this, I don't know.
So that's an enthusiastic yes from
100%.
on the.
I'm just trying to think of like Universal's like live action production, and it's like Fast and the Furious, Jurassic World, Halloween,
Chris
and
Pratt's
Zelda.
gonna be Link.
Like I'm trying to think of like what they're. I mean, they own DreamWorks, who made Puss in Boots too. Like that seems like a much more logical fit if you're going to make a.
Oh my god! If DreamWorks handled Legend of Zelda, like I'd be all on board.
Yeah.
Hey, don't forget, Universal also did Waterworld.
Well, they did, yeah. That's right, because the logo like took over the whole planet on the universe. Yeah, how could you ever forget?
I mean, Universal like does good movies too, right? I mean, like it's not just but it's like, and I think that this could absolutely work in live action. I think that Netflix. There was a rumor for a long time that Netflix was trying to do a live action Zelda show, right? You guys will remember that.
Oh, I do remember that.
Yeah, and so. And I think that either fell through or it never ended up being real, or I'm not really sure exactly what happened with that, right? But either way, I think that animation probably would be the better choice for a Zelda movie. I think also just for Nintendo Pictures as they're getting off the ground, this whole kind of movie MCU, whatever you want to call it. I think that, keeping it all animated would probably make the most sense, but I think out of most of the,
Nintendo franchises, it's the one that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that you could do it. It's just like,
I agree.
it's just the wiggle room you have for it to be good is much tighter with live action. I think you'd have to really fucking nail it in order to pull it off
and not spend less than $200 million.
Yeah. Yeah. You'd really have to do a total overhaul. What do you think about this, Patrick?
I think they should do a live action Kirby movie.
Hell yeah.
Jesus.
Just like a kaiju movie where he gets like bigger and bigger as the movie goes on.
I was just trying to think of the worst Nintendo franchise to do live action. That's what popped in my head while y'all were talking.
Wasn't there also a rumor this past week about a Star Fox Illumination movie too? Did we talk about that last week?
No, we didn't.
That's fine. We can do that.
I thought we might rope it into this discussion if we wanted, but I don't know how credible that is either. But maybe that's more interesting to talk about.
Who was the actor they had for that one?
Chris Hemsworth, our friend Thor, which I don't know that they're saying that he's going to voice Fox.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Hello, it's me, Fox. Fox McCloud from the Lilat system.
That
He's
sounds
more
like
of a
what
Falco
people...
to me.
Oh, what? No, Falco's like dweeby sounding to me. I was
Hey,
gonna say,
Einstein, I'm on your side.
yeah. That sounds to me like what people who main Fox in Smash think they sound like in their heads.
I'm shine sparking now.
Oh boy.
Anyway. Yeah, I see like that made by elimination. I think like would be probably a better thing to do.
would
But then
fucking
also it's like what does Nintendo want to do to get asses in seats and make the most return on investment? Is milk the two biggest franchises that they have, right?
Well,
So
yeah.
I totally get this. And again, it's like how the MCU started. Well, maybe
Right.
that's not a great example because it's not like Iron Man is the biggest MCU character.
But I
or
think it's
Marvel
a
character.
fair comparison to be like, you save these, like, just like these would be the Guardians of the Galaxy, right?
Right.
They're
Right.
like, nobody knows who these characters are, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Another thing we'll follow if we get any official news. It probably won't be for a while, but we can move on to some Mario Kart Tour news. Nintendo has announced that Mario Kart Tour new content is going to be ending this October. That's very soon. Like less than a month from now is the last bit of content for Mario Kart Tour. What do y'all think about this? Has this game not been successful, or is it just kind of starting to die down? I guess they're going to still have things. It's just going to kind of be like recycling things, right? No new karts.
It's not like they're not taking it offline like they did with Miitomo
Yet.
or something like that, right? I mean, I'm sure they will at some
Vidalia.
point. Yeah.
R.I.P. every other except
Yeah.
for one. There is
Yeah.
one. There is one king who remains.
Only Fire Emblem Heroes remains.
I'm telling you, you have Tears of the Kingdom thanks to Fire Emblem Heroes.
Yeah. But I mean, this game is very successful, and I think it makes a ton of money, and a lot of people play it. I think what this says to me is that they have a core Mario Kart team actively working on this game all the time, and that we're wrapping up the Booster Course Pass. We're wrapping up Mario Kart Tour. They're going to be moving a lot of those developers over to whatever Mario Kart 10 is. We need to stop referring to the next one as 9. Mario Kart Tour is Mario Kart 9. We need to come to terms with that. But I think they're going to be moving everybody over to that, which is also why we haven't seen an ARMS sequel, because they've all been working on Mario Kart Tour this whole time, right? So yeah, that's what it says to me. I think this is good. I think, there was a long amount of support for this game and a ton of fucking racers, a ton of fucking content. So I think this is a good run for a mobile game like this.
Mm-hmm.
Relatedly, in terms of Mario Kart, at least, Nintendo has announced there's going to be some new holiday bundles. We've got information about a new Mario Kart Switch bundle. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this time I think it is a better deal. It is still the original Switch. It's not the OLED screen, but it comes with Mario Kart and like 3 months of NSO. And weren't the bundles before priced to include the cost of the game, and this one now the game is free? Or am I wrong and they've always been free?
I think they've always been free. Is that? Fuck, that's a good question. I think they were always 300.
Either way,
With
the game
Mario
is free. And then in addition to that, they also have Switch Lights now that are like Animal Crossing themed and come with Animal Crossing for free. So this is the first time we're seeing an Animal Crossing pack in. So there's the budget Switch Lite with Animal Crossing, and then the Switch with Mario Kart, and a couple months of NSO. Yeah, if somebody can verify that, I just kind of remember them not being priced, but I could be wrong. Or if you listener,
Switches.
Yeah,
I feel like prior to the Switch, there was a good deal like included. I'm speculating. I don't pay attention because I always buy systems day one.
Right. We're not the audience for this
bundle.
7 years later because we all already have a Switch or 3.
It's hard to like look at retailers for like
old things that happened 2 years ago.
Black Friday deals.
That's true.
Yeah, but
if anybody
I will
remembers,
say,
correct me. Yeah.
There is another one. I'm not sure if this one's coming to the US, but I know at least in the UK, they're doing a OG Switch with Nintendo Switch Sports packed in as well, which is what I thought they should have done to launch that game, right?
Yeah.
Or like done that a couple of years ago whenever it came out. But I think they wanted to get more actual sales out of it first. But that's one you get for your geriatrics. You know, I mean, you get that for the olds in your life, right? You know, finally, you know, move more product onto them, hit that PlayStation 2 sales number with the Switch. So,
Right.
but I mean, this is good. It's nice to finally see some other bundles. I think that Animal Crossing bundle is really great for anybody who like hasn't played Animal Crossing yet. You know, that's a good value and a really great game.
We've been talking about the September Nintendo Direct. Will they, won't they? What's it going to be? That sort of thing. Honestly, this might be old news at this point. That sure seems like there's a lot of rumors swirling that the Direct's happening. So if it gets announced and happens between us recording it and releasing it, I won't be surprised. So we always get into weird territory here with how much time do we want to spend on this, but if it hasn't happened yet, there's that leaker Pioro who's been right with these sort of last minute predictions, and that's why it seems like it's happening. And we don't have to spoil everything for you because that might spoil the Direct, but you can go to Pioro's Twitter or just Google it because lots of gaming news websites are showing what Pioro has shown and said.
And Nate on his most recent podcast, and Nate the Hate, also said, it's going to be happening this week.
There's some of the things we've been talking about for a while anyway. So if you've been following Nintendo rumors, it's probably not a surprise to you, but we'll try not to spoil you.
All that said, hopefully next week, we'll be back with a good old fashioned Direct reactions episode.
Yeah. And way to call it with Elabit's Sproulix.
The glorious return.
Konami's back in the game.
Jordan's Electroplankton also makes an appearance.
So another rumor that we've been already talking about but has more smoke, so there's probably fire, is the fact that at Gamescom is like now more outlets are saying, yes, at Gamescom, Nintendo was showing the next console behind closed doors. And there's been more details about that. So it seems like that went from somebody's just saying it on a podcast to now everybody's saying, yes, this happened. I guess, does anybody want to, like, again, Nate the Hate, another, Nintendo leaker, also been saying more details about this, right?
Yeah, I think the really interesting stuff here was there's allegedly 2 demos that were shown, one being a Breath of the Wild demo in which they showcased the game running at 4K, 60 FPS with ray tracing and with instant loading. So some sort of solid state, no load screen, sort of, like the modern, like PS5 and Xbox have now, right? Now, obviously, this is not, they don't have like a Switch 2 back there running this. This is a PC with those specs of what they're targeting for the system, right? But I mean, if that's true, that's really, really exciting. And then to me, what was even more exciting was that they showed off the Matrix Awakens demo. That was an Unreal Engine 5 kind of tech demo that was, released on the PlayStation and Xbox as well, which I played on my Series S. It was very fucking impressive showcase of Unreal Engine 5 and the way that you could have big open cities instantly load and just really amazing particle physics and just a great showcase of the Unreal Engine 5 engine. And so, so I mean, if this is all true, this is pretty cool, man. This is not a device that's going to be in your hand running 4K natively, right? This is probably running like 720p and using DLSS to upscale and maybe even add like interpolated frames. But the idea that you could get something that's even close to like, modern PS5 visuals on a handheld is pretty amazing. And it kind of shows that like NVIDIA collaboration paying dividends, being able to utilize something like, DLSS 3.5, which allows for interpolation and ray tracing. And a lot of people have been saying the same thing. I think on Nate the Hate's episode, he just had one come out today on it. He said he was hearing something about March 2024, either for a launch or an announcement of this device as well. So I don't know what you guys think about that.
That seems reasonable. Yeah. I mean, not the tech specs. I have no idea what's reasonable there, but like that time frame.
Yeah, I had been holding strong for the most of the year that they were going to release in the system in March, pretty much follow the same release cadence, but we're past like the original Switch announcement in September. Like that, if that doesn't happen like in the next week, and I can't imagine why they'd blow their Christmas this time. So I don't see it happening. And I still could see a summer release just because they would like to, get in the hands of first launches and not have like Christmas shortages, but I don't know.
Sure.
That's my big concern. So.
Yeah.
What do you think, Summer? Do you think it's still coming out at the end of this year with the Pokemon DLC?
I was debating on saying it for the bit. Yeah, it's coming out this year. That's what the direct that it releases today is going. You listener, you already know that we are getting a new Switch this year.
Pokemon DLC is a launch title.
Yes,
the DLC comes out today of the release date, doesn't it? Doesn't it come out on the 13th?
Oh, that's a good question.
Wait, what?
Does.
The Pokemon DLC?
Yeah.
I thought it was later.
Oh, I don't know. My son is excited, so he's going to be disappointed if I'm wrong. Y'all already know, listener.
Wait. Oh, really? You might be right. If this article is from
September 13th, Teal Mask. Yep.
Okay.
So Switch is coming out in 2 days.
Yes. So if you're listening to this, you already have the first wave of.
They're shadow dropping the Switch too.
Yeah, I'm playing the Switch 2 right now, and I'm going to talk about what I've been playing at the end of the
Virgo
episode.
season. Happy birthday, Summer.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a reveal in March makes a bunch of sense.
Yes,
right.
Especially the whole.
We get
Christmas.
Yeah, whatever they've announced now, vis-a-vis the Peach game, Luigi's Mansion, all this kind of stuff that still needs to come out, gets out. And then when they announce it, and then it's just trickles of remasters or whatever the extra stuff they want to throw in the mix, and then they have it ready for, like you said, Vince, a late summer or November release for the holidays. That would give them enough time to manufacture as well, hopefully throughout the summer if they did do that and, not have a major shortage. I know that was something that they didn't want to have this go round. But yeah, I mean, these tech specs, man, if it's kind of part of the reason we wanted to do this episode today is that, it sounds like Nintendo is trying to finally kind of court some of these third parties and get back into relative parity with a lot of the other big guns, right? I mean, obviously, like I said, it's utilizing DLSS. It's still a tablet at the end of the day. But if they're able to get, modern performance, out of modern games on a hybrid, that would put them in a really good position. I could see them courting a lot of those hardcore gamers over to their side, which is kind of the one kind of final frontier of demographics that Nintendo really needs within the gaming space. Not that they need it, but that, it would be another thing for them to conquer. So that's interesting stuff.
Well, and then we'll close out our news with another sort of semi-related thing, which is another big gaming journalist, Gene Park, over at the Washington Post, had an article / interview with Doug Bowser, the president of Nintendo of America, at Nintendo Live, the event that just recently happened, where he kind of talked to him about Nintendo's evolving, evolution to being a broader entertainment company. And this is sort of a Doug Bowser quote. He said, "We're actually evolving into being an entertainment company with gaming as a nucleus of the overall business model." And also, Gene Park asked him directly about, sort of higher specs and the fact that at the Microsoft FTC trial, they said Nintendo wasn't really a competitor. Of course, he kind of brushed off that comment and laughed it off. But, just these are the sort of things that inspired us to want to have this episode today. I don't know that there was anything of note in this interview. It was just sort of about how Nintendo is expanding with movies and their presence in, theme parks and that sort of thing, which is another thing that's happened recently. So unless anybody has anything on that, I think we could probably save it for the main topic. We're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking all about the changing of the different Nintendo eras under the different presidents over time. Well, in light of the news that Nintendo's next console might be hardware packed and the Switch, kind of coming to a close, we thought this would be a good time to sort of reflect back on how Nintendo has changed over time, in particular the video game era, and under different leaderships. We're kind of breaking it into 3 different eras. Obviously, this is arbitrary somewhat, but by the major presidents of the company, there was a little interim president, but we're going to skip over that, or maybe we'll talk about it.
Probably talk about it.
We'll talk about it. All right. But, Nintendo started as a card company owned by a Yamauchi, and there were several Yamauchis in there up until Hiroshi Yamauchi, who brought Nintendo into the video game era. I mean, that's an oversimplification, I know. Like Gunpei Yokoi was involved in making things and that sort of thing, and they spotted him, and I don't know. We can talk about it. I'm out in the weeds. The point is, we're talking about Nintendo's eras and breaking it down and asking the question, what sort of marks these different eras, and where is Nintendo headed? Did I summarize that well?
Yeah, I think it's like, it's also just kind of like, you hear a lot of people recently saying, man, Nintendo has really changed or is changing now. And the Furukawa era of Nintendo is a big change from what they've been doing so far in the past historically. And I thought that this is like a good opportunity to kind of like go through a lot of those changes as they have happened and kind of pose the question on like, is Furukawa changing Nintendo a lot right now, or is this just the natural progression of the evolution of Nintendo, right? So that'll be kind of like what we want to talk about in this episode.
Yeah, well, maybe we can start with just kind of what defined Nintendo early on when they got into video games. Like, right? What was that rock of foundation once they broke into video games? Obviously, it started with, like little Game & Watches and big arcade machines. Mm-hmm. But at some point, they came up with the Famicom and the NES. And that's kind of where we should maybe really start with what defined that era. What are some of the things you all think of? What I think of is the Nintendo seal of quality, right? Mm-hmm. And also them litigating the hell out of anybody that tried to manufacture cartridges or whatever.
Right.
As being defining things of that era.
I mean, those are very American things. Right. I don't think as many of those were happening in Japan.
That's true.
So like the Nintendo seal of quality comes out of and y'all talked about this in the past, the video game crash of the US in 1984. Basically, like Atari had like a ton of shovelware, which is not dissimilar from like Steam and Switch today, if we're being honest. And people didn't understand like they didn't want to be like, man, I don't know if this is gonna be a good game or not. And so Nintendo was like, okay, well, we have to buy off on every single game that comes through. This is the propaganda they gave me through Nintendo Power. And also we're going to limit every company down to 5 games per year. So don't come out with shit because, just 5 good games a year. And then we'll like quietly look away while Konami comes up with another company and makes 10 games a year under Ultra.
Right.
Well, you actually bring up a really good point, and I don't mean to cut you off, which is like, my perception as an American and what defines these eras, it might be different. I think maybe the more recent eras are more global, but like, these earlier eras, there might have been different strategies and things in different regions too, right?
Yeah. I don't know what took off. Like, I mean, like if you're like rolling the dice, I still don't really know why Nintendo took off and like other companies didn't. Like they were doing like a lot of like also ran like ports and like Pac-Man and Pong clones, like everybody was at the time of like whatever happened to be popular. And Donkey Kong hit really well. Mm-hmm. And then there were ports of Donkey Kong to like the Atari and the ColecoVision. Mm-hmm. And then Nintendo's like, we should just make a good Donkey Kong like on our system.
Yeah, why are they making all the money off of our game?
Because they're licensing it out, right? And so like 83, because the same day that the Famicom comes out, Sega's first system, the SG-1000 comes out, which predates like even the Master System. Mm-hmm. And so you're like, why did Sega's not take off nearly as much as Famicom? And I'm not sure. And probably a lot of it has to do with Hiroshi Yamauchi just being like a stone cold badass and an asshole. Definitely got shit done. And a lot of quality control. I think famously he never played a single video game, but he also like made people play every video game in front of him before he would buy off on like letting it out the door. Mm-hmm. These are all anecdotes, that have probably been passed on from Nintendo propaganda again. But That's the stories as it
Yeah, the official Nintendo story is that Yamauchi was a total asshole.
Well,
No, but I mean, it's, obviously, yes. I mean, I think that in Japan, Sega and Nintendo were a lot more even keeled, especially early on, right? And I think that eventually that kind of made its way to the US with the Genesis finally being at least a little bit of a real competitor. But in that early days, it was Nintendo's game. They, especially here in the West, in Japan, the market is only so big, right? In Japan, like the gold mine is out in the West, right? And so they brought the gaming industry back in the US, right? It was really kind of like, for better or for worse, propaganda or no, like there's a reason that most people just called video games Nintendos for a long time. It was like Kleenex, right? And so this was kind of the Yamauchi era to me, is this like this era of innovation, being at the front of the pack, like being the market leader, not just in the way that like the Switch is probably like technically the market leader, like of the modern era. It doesn't feel like that. Switch feels like its own thing, and then there's like gaming, with like Steam and Xbox and PlayStation and stuff like that. Like back then, it was just Nintendo.
It's like 90%. It was like
exactly.
insane.
Yeah. So
it's not like PlayStation and Xbox. Like, yeah, PlayStation's winning, but not by that much.
Right. Exactly. and like you said, Patrick, that like the cutthroat business strategies, like the putting chips in that make it to where you can't play cartridges that aren't produced by Nintendo, suing the pants off of people and settling class action lawsuits with coupons for their products. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff is kind of what to me marks this era of Nintendo leadership. And that, Yamauchi era kind of continued all the way through the NES, the Super Nintendo, into the N64, and then I think the launch of the GameCube, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he retired, I think, in 2002. If I'm not mistaken. But it also what we'll probably learn through all of these characters is their greatest strengths end up becoming their failings. So what that cutthroat thing does, and like it makes Nintendo a ton of money because they're manufacturing all the cartridges. And I think I remember reading in GamePro, it was like $15 to $20 went straight to Nintendo for every cartridge, like in the Super Nintendo era at least, and the 64 era. So if you're a Capcom and want to make 1 million copies of some game to launch with, you're basically doing a $15 million outlay before you see any profit, and you're giving it to Nintendo. So Nintendo's making their money. They don't care. And then that's why like Namco and them and Tengen are like, can we not give Nintendo $15 a cartridge?
Yeah.
Let's make a cartridge that gets past this lockout chip so we don't have to do that. And then by the time you get to the Nintendo 64 era and CDs are like $1 to manufacture as opposed to $15, like shit, we're just going to Sony. Fuck this shit. And then everybody bails. Like, so like what makes Nintendo a ton of money in the NES Super Nintendo era fucks them in the end. And
it was there. To me, it's like the hubris of the Yamauchi era, right? It's like, we've been at the top, it's like there's no way like we're going to, we're sticking with this. It's worked in the past. It's like they were radically innovative for a lot of the beginning part of it, just in terms of their business practices. But then they kind of rested on their laurels and they got a little too comfortable being at the top of the heap. And so that's kind of what caused the kind of slip, right? They let Sony get in like under their nose. They sabotaged the deal with Sony for the Nintendo PlayStation, right? That kind of like CD add-on that they were going to do. And then, Sony was like, all right, fuck this. We're going to do our own thing. And then, all of a sudden they find themselves not like leading the entire industry anymore for the first time with the N64.
Yeah.
I also feel like we need to give Yamauchi's son-in-law mention, because I assume he was kind of just doing what he was told, but also I think his name's Minoru Arakawa.
Arakawa. Yeah.
He was the president of Nintendo of America.
Yeah, and I think he had a lot to do with some of those Western decisions too, I would assume, and Donkey Kong and all that stuff.
Yeah, he was very instrumental in the unsold radar scope machines, transitioning them into Donkey Kong machines.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's all a team effort. It's not obviously, I mean, every corporation, despite, what you want to say as one person, it's always a team effort and there's a ton of people involved, but like the Yamauchi era defined a lot of these things. Yeah. But like to their credit also, like Yamauchi oversaw like the first successful, I think, console generation shift over. Like people didn't follow the Atari 2600 and the 5200. Like that didn't happen. Like they just kind of went there elsewhere. Like Nintendo managed to transition people to the Super Nintendo, which is, I don't know how like you come up with that concept and be like, every 6 years, you're just going to change systems and stay with us and don't leave. But like, like not leaving for Sega. And so they just ceded market control as time went on. But man, it was quite the era for him, and they did a good job.
Yeah. Well, unless there's anything else, we can move on to, we can do an overview and then come back, or if there's anything. David, sounds like you want to say something.
Yeah, I'd say just because this is going to come in later with kind of the Iwata era and the Furukawa eras I don't think that Nintendo I think they wanted to be a multimedia company all the way back then. You know what I mean? I think that, I think probably, bet you anything that they were already talking about the ideas of theme parks. There were already comparisons between Disney and Nintendo back in the day, right? Obviously Mario being Nintendo's Mickey and all this kind of thing, like as the mascot, right? And obviously they tried to reach out into multimedia, and they did a lot of TV back in the day. There were a lot of Saturday morning cartoons for, we've done an episode here on Captain N. There's obviously the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, the Legend of Zelda show, lots of stuff like that. Obviously a lot more in Japan as well. They had their own kind of like animes that we never got here. But then, they had a big Hollywood movie with the Mario movie. And I think that this was kind of another way that they bit off a bit more than they could chew, right? They just kind of assumed we throw a bunch of money at a Hollywood project, it's going to come out great. And it was universally panned. It was a huge bomb. It was a disaster for Nintendo, right? And I think that really scared them off of this multimedia empire for a while, and they kind of doubled back down and focused more on the games and that kind of thing. And then I just wanted to bring that up.
To that point though, all these Japanese multi-conglomerates, like they were doing that. Nintendo's a 150-year-old company. Like they obviously didn't start making video games. And they, go where the money's at. But and Sony has shown that over time. They made the Walkman, they do TVs, they do wherever, Samsung has been a similar thing, although they're Korean. Japanese companies and Korean companies, they just shift wherever they're needed. And so I could see Nintendo doing that concept at the time. And then I know Coca-Cola owned Paramount Pictures at the time. They produced Ghostbusters.
Is that true?
Yeah. It's a Coca-Cola movie. Yeah. So things are weird. Things are weird at that time. So I can understand Nintendo just they have the 80s Japanese bubble, just wanting to put money wherever. And then the Japanese bubble burst and they have to go skirting back to what was their core concept, which we'll talk about later as well.
Yeah.
So
I don't think we can talk about Yamauchi without mentioning the Seattle Mariners.
That's true.
Yeah, that's another.
Yeah.
So, and just thought it was a time to mention it while y'all are like, oh, they always wanted to have their hands in everything. Where is our Nintendo baseball team now?
Didn't you want to change the name, right? To something Nintendo related?
I don't know that was ever confirmed.
I don't know.
I believe they did have the largest playoff drought in any of the major four sports. I think they didn't go to the playoffs from 1995
it was bad.
to 2020.
Not good.
There's all those
Nintendo
free
sold them.
Nintendo games they were giving them.
Yeah.
The players just sat around playing games.
That Griffey game is great though. Me and my dad had a lot of fun playing that Griffey game. It was all worth it.
For a while, you could purchase snacks with a DS at the Mariner Stadium. Yeah, which was interesting. But yeah, I think.
Wait, what? Seriously?
Yeah, look it up. It's a real thing. But yeah, I think the last thing we should probably bring up about Yamauchi was the launch of the GameCube, and that being kind of the last time before now, if the rumors are to be believed about the Switch successor, that Nintendo kind of even attempted to have any sort of technological parity with other modern consoles of the time, right? I think that, they really put a lot into the tech of the GameCube. That's not to say that they were dropping a bunch of money like something like Microsoft was. Microsoft was losing money on every Xbox sold. I think the PlayStation 2 also was probably a loss. They were still making it cheap. making these things like cheaply, but like GameCube was them trying to be like, hey, we can get all the third-party games with the rest of them. I think the thing that kind of held it back, I think, was them trying to Nintendo-fy it a little bit more, having a different layout for the controller, having the different kind of disc format that made it difficult for people to actually port things, even though it's, technically similar kind of architecture. But it was interesting seeing them in a very Nintendo way try to kind of reach some of the levels of everybody else, right?
Yeah. If I recall correctly, and again, this was the propaganda, it was more powerful than the GameCube is more powerful than the PlayStation 2, but less powerful than the Xbox, if I recall correctly. And I think the Resident Evil 4 port being compromised for PS2, I think goes to that thought. I'll also say by the end of the Yamauchi era, I was online and there was kind of blood in the water. Like I think he'd pretty much like soured relationships with so many third parties. Like obviously like Square Enix had left by that point, that like, and even Capcom, who's like a staunch Nintendo friend, only released 3 games on the 64, like period. So like the third party like support of the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and then the 64 just crumbles. And so like a lot of going in the next era, like Iwata's having to really repair all those relationships. And we'll see that in the Iwata era.
Well, yeah, that's a great thing for us to segue within. Yeah, the next president of Nintendo, Satoru Iwata, came in around 2002, and we sort of associate him most with the Wii, right? I guess, and the DS, and the sort of strategy, the blue ocean, quote unquote, strategy of trying to appeal across generations and across demographics to everybody. And I think, when you look at the Wii, you could say that was probably pretty successful, right? Like that idea.
It was all right.
It was all right.
It's
He did okay. He sold a few Wii Sports copies.
Just a few. Best-selling console of all time after like PS2 and DS, right? Something like that. And maybe Switch now. But like the blue ocean strategy was, we've been fighting over the same like tiny lake of gamers over and over again, doing these like, graphics wars to try to be more powerful than our competitors, when there's a whole blue ocean of potential customers out there we should be going after that, frankly, like Sony and Microsoft aren't going after. I mean, and then the cell phones are going to take that in 2 years, but don't worry about that right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Don't you guys have phones?
Don't worry about that. But it's a very sound strategy. And like we talked about that with obviously Elebits. Elebits is very understandable to everybody. But the Wii Sports getting into all the retirement homes, like the retirement homes, people aren't buying Nintendos and they're not playing DuckTales the way I was at daycare. And I know a lot of friends had just fallen off of gaming. Like, quite frankly, like once it got more complicated than Mario Kart, they were done. Like even GoldenEye was like, when you had like a party with friends, like there was like a thing. And then like, especially like in mixed non-gamer and gamer groups, it was like, we're playing Mario 1, we're playing Mario Kart. And that's about as far as this group is going to go. And that was pre-Wii for me. Like not everybody was down with GoldenEye. Mario Party was like pretty cross lines, but I'm thinking like Nintendo's just leaning into like that, which the hardcore gamers, as it were not too thrilled with. But
yeah, I think it's like the reaction to 3D gaming, right?
Yeah.
Like 3D gaming, obviously, like some people listening to this, no problem, right? But you handed 2 sticks or whatever, or in the
2 sticks and 8 buttons.
Yeah,
What are you
like
talking
to somebody who's not experienced with it, it's hard sometimes to step into that mind frame. But a lot of people just that's too hard to move a camera around, or they just don't have that experience, especially at that time, and
Right.
so on. So,
and I think to me, and obviously I think we just to speak a little bit to Satoru Iwata himself as a leader before kind of talking about kind of maybe what even inspired some of these changes. He was a very innovative and radical thinker, right? Like I think that he, I think under his tutelage, like Nintendo really had a lot of that investment in engineering and programming, and a lot of like the way that he would think about the world and the way that he saw the world as a gamer and as a programmer himself. That's very different from someone like Yamauchi, who came from a long line of Yamauchis that owned fucking Love Hotels and whatever, right?
Right.
And it's like, now he's like, no, I'm a gamer and I love this and I understand this and I want to get everybody into gaming as much as I am. I feel like it would have been Iwata's plan to make Yamauchi a gamer, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think that's kind of a bit of what he was trying to come at from. And I think, and in addition to that, you also see the last two consoles that Nintendo put out, Game Boy and Game Boy Advance notwithstanding, just kind of talk about home consoles here, being failures, essentially, in the eyes of the console war, right? Or a race between them, it's like, we got to do something different. We can't just, this isn't working. Like whatever we tried to do with the N64, it was incredible at the time. Like we were, there was a lot of reason that N64 was better than PlayStation at the time. It wasn't in the eye of the consumer at the end of the day, right? I think that GameCube was ultimately a failure. I think they're like, we got to do something different. That's where you start to see them really getting this hard on for just like radical innovation and just like putting themselves apart from the pack. And this is where you start to see Nintendo being its own kind of section of gaming outside of everybody else who's just kind of competing for the same piece of the pie. The Wiimote being like that. It was a huge, crazy change that was hard for a lot of people to wrap their heads around. The dual screen of the DS and then the glasses-less 3D of the 3DS. This is when we start to see a lot of games coming out that could only be on these systems that utilize these kinds of controls for better or for worse. I mean,
I think developers were excited about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of them were very excited, and that's why you saw huge libraries on all of these systems, right? Like, the Wii had an enormous fucking library. This is like peak Nintendo shovelware, I think, because they were actually shipping these fuckers on discs, back then, right? But it's like, but I think this is also where you started to see Nintendo alienating themselves from a lot of the third parties, though, right? Because they don't want to have specific teams making games for the Wii. They want to just be able to put their shit on the Wii, right? And then, why would you play Call of Duty on the Wii? Especially in the era of online gaming where everybody's starting to play online and everything's kind of like within their own little ecosystems. This is where I think the EA, Ubisoft, a lot of these companies started to kind of like fall out of favor with them a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, yeah, it was too much to try to create like a game with like a lower power spec and a control spec and a lower online spec, and this is where like Madden pretty much just left Nintendo and never came back. Is it still back? It's still not back, right?
No.
I think there was like
no
one
reason to.
I think there was one Wii U game, maybe like launch, and then that was it. I think that's the last time we've seen that.
All we get is FIFA at home.
Yeah, but FIFA Legacy Edition is just like roster updates and call it a day, right?
Yeah,
and my son's been playing NBA 2K24, and I know that's not a parity with the other versions. Yeah, but like Iwata also comes as like from, as you were saying, like from a developer background. There's all those Iwata asks, like he can talk to the developers like about their challenges in a way that like everybody couldn't. Like Yamauchi definitely could not, and most executives can't talk to their workers. Like, when you talk about like the best, like the Domino's managers and Domino's leadership, like they're the best Domino's pizza makers and they get promoted up the system. But Nintendo and most companies is not that way. But like Iwata came in as like a fixer. Like he saved Earthbound, and then he was the one that was responsible for getting the second map of the original Pokemon inside of Pokemon Gold Silver, the second Pokemon. Like he did that coding himself. Like, I think he just came in with troubled projects for Nintendo in the 90s. And it's like, I don't even know if he was a full Nintendo employee. You have Ask Iwata back there, David.
No,
he worked
for.
He was at HAL for a while. Yeah.
Which is adjacent. But he just came in as a fixer. And I've seen like fixers at my company, like they just sometimes get promoted up the line, up the chain. And I know that even like in the years leading up to his promotion, people are like, why is this Iwata guy coming on all these interviews? Like, and people are like, pay attention to him because he's rising high in Nintendo. So even in the years before Yamauchi retired, like people knew that Iwata was someone to pay attention to. So that's kind of where he's coming from.
Well, we talked about the success of the Wii and the DS, but what about sort of came after the obvious flop of the Wii U?
Yes,
is part of his legacy as well. And then we can jump ahead and say that the Switch is kind of his legacy too, right? Yes. And recovering from that. But let's focus maybe on the Wii U and you have down here, somebody wrote in the 3DS launch as well, because I think the 3DS was.
The 3DS launch was bad. Like, I mean, the 3DS like salvaged itself, but it was like fire all cannons. Like they basically,
they launched it for $250, right?
Which is only $50 more than the PlayStation Portal, I'll add. But but it was somehow too expensive. And it was. I didn't even buy it. And I was a Nintendo faithful person.
I bought it and I was in college.
Yeah.
All like you ate ramen for the rest of the year. Yeah.
Right. But and then they even had to do like this huge mea culpa with like dropping the price down, which to like below cost, which Nintendo never does. They always are trying to make a profit even on system sales. And then they put out like the ambassador games, and then they came out with the best 3D or 2D Mario you could come up with, Mario 3D World or 3D Land at that time. So they launched that, Mario Kart 9, Fire Emblem, and they were able to salvage 3DS. But they were like, handheld's been Nintendo's bread and butter. Even when like GameCube was bad, like Game Boy Advance and DS were like crushing it for them. So they've always been able to rely on that. So they saved the 3DS. They could not save the Wii U. And then that's where like Iwata takes like a 50% pay cut, which I've never heard of an executive ever do.
It's because he wasn't, that kind of a person.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. He came from the bottom, right? And like
He's
worked
like,
his
this
way
is
up.
a failure, and like other people shouldn't be the ones to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
I want to add that it was the year of Luigi, just so we don't forget that and make that mistake again.
That's true.
It was when they decided to have a year of Luigi is when we had the massive Wii
Second
failure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything.
The guy's always fucking up everything, man. I fucking hate that guy. Nah, I like our boy Luigi.
Only buff Luigi though.
Yeah. I mean, this is totally, this is again, like Nintendo being like, yo, this worked before. Why wouldn't this work again? Let's have a system with a screen on the controller, right? And then they got just a little too confident in the Wii branding, and it kind of bit them in the butt, right? Continuing to have kind of underpowered machines, using cheap parts, not feeling like they need to stay at with everybody else, kind of ended up being their undoing there.
It was when Iwata was doing his interviews about the failure of the Wii U that I knew that Iwata was making things for me, because he said, anyone can correct me if but he said something like, I understood the Wii U, but everyone else didn't understand the Wii U. And as someone who bought the Wii U, like almost at launch and really did, appreciate what they were going for with it. Like when he said that, I was like, whatever this man does next. And like, he is a gamer for the gamers.
Yeah, totally.
Weirdly, the Wii U era is some of Nintendo's best games ever. Like like Captain Toad is great.
Mm-hmm.
Super Mario 3D World is great. Like every single first party Nintendo game that came out for the Wii U is fantastic. I don't know, like they just were firing on all cylinders. Their developers were not the problem with the Wii U at all. And honestly, like I think they were like, even the Wii U is like, they were trying to think like, well, Japanese markets, they're small homes, tend to be 1 TV homes. Let's try to pivot to portable, which like was going to pay off later because the console market was not doing great in Japan with the PlayStation. Even the PlayStation 3 wasn't selling well.
It still isn't doing super well in Japan.
So I think they were like directionally accurate, just completely misjudged what the hell they were doing. But their development was always like on point. Like everything that came out in that era, that's probably Nintendo's most like best era for me, is going back to like 2013, 2016.
Oh yeah.
That era.
I love the Wii U. I mean, I think it's a little bit of rose-tinted glasses to call it Nintendo's best year. I mean, there's also a time we were getting major droughts of games and stuff like that. I think a lot of stuff was being held for the Switch. I think they knew it was a failure. They knew they were going to pivot eventually, right? But I think something I do want to talk about with the Iwata stuff, and when in talking about these failures, and it just kind of speaks to the kind of person that Iwata is that, the 3DS, he was able to turn it around, right? The 3DS ended up being a big success, right?
Yeah.
Being humble,
That's
doing
what
that
them through.
Yeah, doing that big ass price drop, giving away those games, like it really worked. I got a 3DS at the beginning. I picked up an original 3DS like before It was like I got the ambassador games, but had already gotten it at price drop prices, like at Walmart. I
Nice.
totally played the system, but it was like, but it was like fucking. It was an act of goodwill, right? I mean, slashing his own salary, that's a big one. There was similarly, they were trying to give games away on Wii U as well. I got Pikmin 3 that way. I got Game and Wario that way. Like if you bought like Mario Kart, you like got a free game.
That was
Like,
insane. They gave that away.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's, they were doing lots of stuff like that. And I think, also this is the time when this is the invention of the Nintendo Direct as well. This is Iwata being like, I want to speak directly to the consumers as the owner of this company and as the leader of this company.
Goofy as hell the whole time.
Right.
And not rent out the
that.
Kodak Center.
Love
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Yeah. It's like, why are we having a bunch of like PR people and whoever doing these like scripted presentations at a thing? I want to talk directly to the consumer and I want to put my best foot forward. I want to show you how truthful I'm trying to be, how I'm trying to do this for you, and this is where that came from. Right. And I think that that is another lasting, obviously, legacy of Iwata, like to this day. I think that, we'll get into it with some of the Furukawa era. I think the Direct has kind of become almost a pastiche of itself, like compared to what it used to be. It's kind of like jumped the shark a little bit, but it's like, that's what to me solidifies that era of Nintendo. Like they were on fucking fire with the Wii. They were on fire with the 3DS. They had a couple stumbles, but man, they were always truthful. They were always honest. And you always knew you were getting something that was unlike anything anybody else was doing. Right.
Yeah. And I also say, like, to your points, like Iwata was one of those executives that was like good on camera and good personably. Like, and a lot of Nintendo executives were really good in that era. Like I remember them, you go to the Sony, you watch the Sony presentations, like this executive should not be in front of like a crowd. Like I'm sure he's fine in boardrooms and stuff, but man, like the hubris, like Iwata was really good. And then like when Kimishima came down, I was like, Kimishima's like, I'm not gonna do this shit.
Yeah,
like I'm not good at this. Like I'll do business. I'll put other people in front of the camera. Like Iwata just seemed like a good, friendly dude. And like the one time I met him, like he seemed nice and friendly and like a good executive. Which is rare to say. I feel
You just casually dropped it. You met Iwata. Nice.
nice
job.
that was nice, right?
How
You don't get to
casual
just say that
was.
and not tell us like what the circumstances were.
Well, you can listen to episode 203 of Super Switch Headz. And find
New podcast is some of my friends have met Iwata. Yeah.
R.I.P. No, I met him and Miyamoto while playing Donkey Kong Jungle Beat and Resident Evil 4 at E3 2004. They walked past me. I was very, very quiet. And my friend shook both their hands and said, "Thank you for making my childhood." It was very sweet. But like they were very nice dudes. Iwata seemed nice. He was shorter than me. I remember that.
Yeah.
Nice.
He looks like a little guy.
Well, I think, we talk about the Wii U as a failure, and it was, I guess, financially and all that, but in Iwata saving things. And I think maybe Iwata did save the Wii U by cutting its lifespan short and creating the Switch, right? Like, and I don't think he's often credited with that, but that's
Well, he passed away before the Switch came out, you know? And so it's hard to. A lot of people don't see the Switch as his legacy, and that's kind of some of what we'll probably talk about here. Is in the Furukawa era, is that a lot of this was stuff from the mind of Iwata, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so he passed away, and there was the interim president. You mentioned Vincent. Kimishima, right?
Kimishima, yeah.
He was the Nintendo of America president.
Yeah.
And was sort of
I'm sure he was part of their succession plan that like were, as all companies have to have, is if somebody passes away unexpectedly or has to, go on sabbatical, like who comes in. And so he came in and was just like very much like, I'm going to be here for like 18 months. And he was, and then he was gone.
Right. And he was he was the president of Nintendo of America, but I think he had like a business background. Right, like finance or whatever, and so does Furukawa. I think he's like an accountant or something early on at Nintendo, and so then now we have Furukawa as the current president, and like it gets a little weird, right? Like we just kind of mentioned that a lot of the things that were coming to fruition had been planned, right? Like you hear like that Smash Ultimate was an Iwata idea, or like. You know what I'm trying to say? A lot of the things that kind of happened had been in discussion and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, but what can we start to say about where that line sort of changes is maybe in the last couple of years, right? Where the games that had been maybe planned prior to Iwata passing away are, have already released. I kind of think about DLC. They made a big push on DLC in Nintendo games as being one thing that I think was even something Furukawa, or maybe it was the interim president said that they want to have more paid DLC for all their games. I think it was Furukawa, but maybe I'm wrong. But and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I just think that like that's one of those sort of like there's a little bit more business mindedness. I don't know. Is that something y'all take away? I don't know.
So I think that there's a major flashpoint, I think, for Nintendo in 2014. That after the year the year of Luigi, where they could not salvage the Wii U, like that's when like they realized the Wii U was doomed. Super Mario 3D World did not light a fire. They had really nothing else. Splatoon, but like Splatoon wasn't. I mean, Splatoon did it good, but like they didn't.
Splatoon was a hit. Yeah,
Choose your next words wisely.
but aside from that, like Nintendo is doing massive pivoting, and this goes back to that like Doug Bowser quote that we're not a video game company, we're an entertainment company. And the idea, like Nintendo's a 150-year-old company. They might not be doing video games in 30 years. Like quite frankly, they didn't do video games 40 years ago. You can't expect them to be a video game company forever. And like them realizing like this is the time, like if we can't do video games and we have to pull a Sega, are we going to go third party or are we going to line up some other assets? And our biggest asset is our IP. And like that's where like the movie deal comes out in 2016. The parks deal for Universal Parks comes out in 2015. Iwata's still around. I don't know how active. I mean, he's quite ill at the time. But Nintendo 2014 is thinking like, if we have to make an exit out of video games, what can we do? Mobile video games, just put that Jack Pacific deal. Like there's so much Nintendo shit now. T-shirts with Mario on them. Like we had like the Super Power Club stuff with like this little like Donkey Kong toy. But like I can buy Daisy toys now like at Target. Like, you know what I'm saying? I can buy Kirby Otama phones. Like what the hell? Like this is just like
that's an import,
shit.
Man.
I know it's an import. I bought it from Jeff Bezos, but like that's like from 2014, I'd say 2020, like Nintendo just making deals, and then like the mobile stuff scales back, and like everything starts scaling back. They're back on video games. The Switch is safe. They're back on their core competency, and they're not having to just like license everything to hell and back. And so I feel like that's where Furukawa is now, is they don't have to just be selling the farm to everybody if they don't want to be.
Yeah. And I think what symbolizes the Furukawa era to me is Furukawa came up as a child playing Nintendo games. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of like this like modern spat of Star Wars directors and creators like grew up watching Star Wars. You know what I mean? It's like, no, I think Nintendo's doing better than modern Star Wars is right now, but that's kind of a discussion for another episode. Yeah. But I think that you find, you find someone here who is like, who holds this kind of stuff in reverence. And so I see a lot of reaching back over the aisle to a lot of the gamers that made Nintendo the company that it is today, right? I think some of this was starting with Iwata, but I think Iwata thought dreams really big and broadly, and Furukawa narrowed the scope a little bit in a way that was really, really, really good for the company as a whole, and helped turn it around. You know, I think that a lot of the relationship with third parties have been reignited. EA notwithstanding, for some reason. I don't know why EA is like still holding off on so many things on Switch. But you know, Nintendo was very family friendly and very like averse to like M-rated games and adult oriented stuff in the Iwata era. I feel like Furukawa doesn't give a fuck. He's like, hentai games on Switch, I don't care. Like, that's fine. You know,
it's a direct quote, right? Wall Street Journal.
It was in Japanese, but yes, you get the idea. And obviously, you know, a lot of this stuff did start with that, but I mean, reaching back out to movie deals, going whole hog into the entertainment sphere, and stuff like that, and playing off of nostalgia, having the Switch be a port machine for old games. I think Nintendo accounts systems, right? Like modernizing, bringing us into the future, bringing us a little bit back to a thing where it's like, okay, Furukawa used to head up Nintendo of Europe, right? So he's got a little bit more of an understanding on what the Western kind of mindset is on video games and what they want, right? So he grew up not only playing Nintendo games, he's also grown up playing Sony consoles and Microsoft consoles. And, he understands the industry, I think, a lot more from a global perspective than Iwata did in a lot of ways. And so I think that's kind of what I think of when I think of the Furukawa era.
I want to piggyback on that and just say that I'm the example here. Out of the four of us, like, I think I'm the least Nintendo hardcore for that period of time between like N64 and the Switch. Like, I was playing Xbox, and I don't know whether it was the advertising or how they did it with the Switch, but they showed more adults in their advertising and that sort of thing. And I think the very nature of the Switch, like, I'd always kind of thought of handhelds as being for kids, and you know what I mean? And now I obviously think differently, but like, and the Switch allowed me to think differently because it's both, right? Like, you're not picking up a thing that you think is for, they did a good job of that. And I think with the games and Breath of the Wild being it's not like it's a grown up game, but it, appealed to me, somebody who had been playing other open, like Skyrim or what, you know what I mean? Like, and stuff like that. They did a good job of connecting the old and the new, I think, in the Switch era.
Absolutely. That's a really good point on turning the handheld from a device that was made so kids could play in the backseat of their parents' car to a device that adults can now play while they're holding their kid in the other arm, with their baby in the, you know what I mean? It's kind of flip-flopped. Right. It's like the kids are playing games on the TV, the adults are sitting on the couch playing the M-rated games on their Switch. And it's like, it used to be the complete opposite of that.
That's my Mortal Kombat challenge. It's like, I have to get a Mortal Kombat 1 portably. I'm just waiting to see if it's good on Steam Deck. Decide whether or not to get it on Switch or Steam Deck.
Yeah, probably better to get it on Steam Deck than Switch. Yeah. But that's kind of what I see, right? And especially with these rumors that, they're working with NVIDIA now to get DLSS up and going, to get a lot of these imagine, fucking Jedi Survivor on the Switch, imagine, Elden Ring as a launch title, imagine, Starfield on the Switch, Nintendo and Microsoft have that kind of cooperation in the past.
Baldur's Gate 3.
Baldur's Gate 3. I will triple dip.
I think something like that is very possible, and I think that's what they want. And I think that Nintendo can continue to innovate and can continue to be a leader in terms of unique and original stuff. And I think that that's something that when you look at all three of these eras, we've been calling them the Yamauchi, Iwata, and Furukawa eras, but they're also kind of the Arakawa, Reggie Fils-Aimé, and Doug Bowser eras. But throughout all of these three eras, we're seeing them being at the forefront of innovation and the rest of the industry constantly playing catch up to get to where they are and being copycats, right? With the Yamauchi era, that was like the huge home gaming console boom where it actually became a feasible business, and you started seeing all these other companies throw their hats in the ring. With the Wii, obviously we saw motion controls and everybody reaching out across the aisle and kind of the birth of mobile gaming for a casual market, right? And then now we see everyone trying to make handhelds a fucking thing. They see how well it works for adults, and they really want, and kids alike, and they want to do that. We're seeing Steam Deck, we're seeing the PlayStation Portal, we're seeing all these different kinds of things now, people following in Nintendo's footsteps. And that's why I think if Nintendo with the next console, did something with VR, I think that's what it would take for VR to finally catch hold, is like Nintendo to nail it, and then everybody follows suit, right? Everybody's been trying to do it forever, but it just hasn't worked.
No, and that I'm about to make a parallel comparison, because everybody points to the Wii U for making motion controls really stick, even though they weren't the first folks to try to do motion control. Right. It was the Sony iToy. They were the first ones, and they were before the Kinect, and they were before the Wii, but it wasn't marketed right, and there weren't enough developers that were on board for it. I fucked around with a friends because one of the DDR, games like added arm movement. And I was like, I love DDR. I have to have every possible format of it, but not everybody's like that. So when you bring up the VR thing, and I know we've talked about this before, you bring up the VR thing and I'm like, I can see Nintendo nailing the VR and everybody else finally figuring out in the same way that, yes, they're not the first people to do VR. They weren't the first people to do motion control, but they figured it out first. So
yeah, absolutely. I could see them sticking the landing and making another big sea change. And I think that this is just kind of what we'll see. I think we're early in this Furukawa era. He's a young guy. He's like 51 or something like that, right? I think he was in his 40s when he got his, But so I think he's got a lot ahead of him here. But I think what we are seeing in the Furukawa era is a bit more of it feels weird to say this as they open up theme parks like devoted to their icons, but like it's almost more of a more humble Nintendo, right? They're like okay with doing a lot of the things that everybody else is doing. They're not like, oh, we're not going to do like online. We're not going to do online accounts because everybody else is doing it. That was kind of like part of the Iwata era, right? I think now they're like, no, it's okay. Sony's doing movies, like we'll do movies. Like they're doing this, we'll do that. Like I think they were like, we don't need a theme park for a long time. But they're like, no, we'll do a theme park. That makes sense. We'll make a lot of money that way. I think Furukawa is a much more like even keeled. He's kind of like the best of both worlds, I think, in a lot of ways. And we'll see how that plays out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think we need to wrap this up. And I think that was actually a really good kind of outro. But is there anything else anybody wants to say, either about sort of the current state or maybe the future before we close out?
We'll have a Nintendo Direct reaction next week.
We did it.
How about that F-Zero port coming out in December?
Spoilers.
Well, I think then, we always appreciate hearing from viewers and listeners. So if you have any comments on anything we talked about or what your, favorite era is or anything you think defined eras we didn't mention, definitely send us a note. We'll try to shout you out. And with that, we'll take another short break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the games that we've been playing recently. This week, I have played a little bit of Splatoon. There was a Splatfest that happened with the Fry Shiver Big Man Splatfest. And I actually got to play some with Summer here because we both chose Shiver, who ended up
We chose
winning.
the right team.
This is the first time our Discord has been divided.
It's true.
Yeah.
I don't know why we voted for the right team.
We did vote. The winner of the vote was Shiver, and then everybody just went their own way. Anyway, but what was that? Saturday night?
Yeah.
Saturday night. Summer and I played a number of matches, and that was a lot of fun playing Splatoon with you, Summer.
Did you guys do any tricolor?
We didn't, which
Not
is
together.
dumb. We should have because there were just two
I was
of
doing
us.
tricolor the next day. Yeah, I know.
But we were just doing
Shiver still won the tricolor, so it's cool.
It was fun. It was random stages. It was
I know.
every tricolor
Yeah.
map that has been out so far.
It was nuts.
As much as I'm, obsessed with Splatoon, I just didn't have a lot of time this weekend. We had a lot going on, but I always play lots of Splatoons. I always talk about it, so I won't talk too much more about it. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the library here in my community, like I live in a suburb of Austin, has Switch games. The Pflugerville Library, if anybody out here is in Pflugerville, and my wife randomly just had put some on reserve, and we finally got Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga.
Enjoy.
Last.
Which
Very good.
Yeah, my son has become obsessed with, like he was really in love with Lego City, and I still think Lego City Undercover is the better game. But
It is.
Lego City Undercover is the best
It is.
Lego game because they didn't have a license, right? They didn't have to deal with a license holder, I think.
Totally.
And I really want them to make more Lego, like other IP. Anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. I think the game's fun. It's a Lego game, but I think I have some criticisms of it. Like it's like
You have some notes.
yeah, I got some notes. I just feel like
Drag them, Patrick. Fucking
well,
drag
all
Star
Lego
Wars
games
Skywalker
have lots
Saga.
of glitches, right? Like they're not great. The game has crashed on us at least 5 times,
Ooh.
and then lose progress sometimes, and then also like my wife has been playing it a lot, and with my son, and I watch them, and it's a little chaotic, and it's not always clear to them what to do. I usually can figure it out, but even sometimes I'm like, let me see that, and I'm like, wait, what are we supposed to do right now? So I think the design of it is a little wild. The cutscenes are a little chaotic and fast paced, which maybe is intentional for an audience, but I also kind of feel like it kind of blasts you with 3 jokes real fast, and then moves on, and it's like, I don't know. But nonetheless, it looks great. If you're a Star Wars fan, you get to ride on all the things, and like it's fun to just experience, so it's not perfect, but
Yeah, I would not recommend any of the other Lego games then, because Skywalker Saga is the best Lego game in years. And if you're having problems with like
I have problems with all
obtuse
the Lego
objectives,
games.
if you're having problems with like obtuse objectives in Skyward Saga, like Lego Marvel 2 is just like a disaster.
Yes.
For you. I love it, but it's just like Lego games are just like have a phone ready anytime. You're just like, what bullshit am I supposed to do?
Batman 2 was good. I think that was the last good one. No, I don't know.
I like Lego Marvel too, but I literally had to be like, what am I supposed to do? Like, you're supposed to walk over to this thing that looks like a bush that you don't know you can touch, and then you touch it. I'm like, okay, got it. Thank you.
I think they rush these games because the license holders want them to put them out, and I think there's crazy crunch at TT or whatever. So, that's me.
I'll go next. I haven't been playing too many games this week. Also played Splatoon 3, RIP, Big Man Stands. I did have some fun though playing. We had who do we have on our side? It was me, AVK, Jay, and Hans. We never all played all 4 together, unfortunately, but I did play with each one of them individually, and that was really fun. We put up a good effort. From what I understand from everybody I talked to, is everybody was winning a lot more this Splatfest than they usually do. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a complete shutout on like one side, even though Shiver did end up getting the majority of the points. It was like, I think everybody was having a lot more fun this go round. So whatever they did to the balancing for this Splatfest, excellent. I hope to see that in the next one as well.
It's definitely interesting that Fry won most conch shells, right?
Yeah.
But like not anything else. So that really does tell you like that everyone was just active during this Splatfest for sure.
Yeah, it was definitely a great Splatfest regardless of the outcome. And it was fun to have a Discord divided, even though like it was fun to have a little bit of like shit talking, even though next time I think I'm going to just go with whoever has the most votes so I can play with all you guys. But it was a nice experiment. So that was fun. Played a little bit of some stuff. I put a little bit of time into like Exodiac, which is a Star Fox clone, but I didn't play enough of it to really talk about it too much. Been still on my Myst kick. I played a little bit of Myst 3. I think I'm going to actually like put the time in to actually beat that game after I beat Riven recently. And I tried Uru, which is like a third person like Myst game that's kind of an MMO. And dude, it is just like unplayable as far as I'm concerned right now. It is like so unlike the Myst games, and the control. I'm trying to play it on my Steam Deck, and unless I like totally overhaul the controls, like it's just feels so ancient and shitty, which is funny that Myst is a 30-year-old game and feels much more modern than that. So that's just, I find that to be interesting. But I think the main thing I want to talk about that I've been putting like so much fucking time into is Starfield. And man, I am loving Starfield, gang. It is so much fun. This game is for some reason like really controversial. Like a lot of people are like, I love Starfield. And a lot of people are like, fuck Starfield. It's a 4 out of 10. Jim Sterling, I'm looking at you. But it's, it's great. I mean, it's not, you just have to have the right expectations going into it, right? Like I was hanging out with my friend Max yesterday, and she was telling me that her friend's dad bought an Xbox just to play this game, and he's disappointed because it's not like just a space flying game. It's like, no, that's not it. It is Fallout or Elder Scrolls in space, right? Like, and if you know that going into it, it's a fucking blast, like, and I think to me, I'm just having all of these kind of emergent experiences that are happening as I'm just randomly exploring like moons around planets that are only tertiarily connected to whatever quest I'm doing, right? You know, I like see a thing and I'm like, oh, what would happen if I flew there? And then I go there and then all of a sudden there's some quest where it's like, you know, somebody is like, there's a giant ship like in orbit around their planet and they're like, I guess this is a spoiler for one of the side quests. So don't listen if you care. But like, you know, there's a, you know, there Summer has removed their headphones, but yeah, there was like, you know, it was like a ship in orbit that they're like, we're not sure who they are. They're not like taking our comms or whatever. And so then they're like, can you board it and like see what it's about? And so I board it and it turns out it's like a generation ship of people that took 200 years to fly to this planet and don't realize that the whole universe is filled with people that can fly around freely. You know what I mean? And so then it was like for hours, I was like on this quest, like trying to like broker a deal between them and the people on the planet who own like a resort. You know what I mean? Like underneath, and they're like, we own this planet or whatever. And so it's like stuff like that you would never think you would find that aren't part of the main quest. Like that's the stuff I'm really enjoying. I'm enjoying just running around with a jetpack and like persuading people to
I was just
not let
about
me
to
kill them.
ask, what background and traits did you go with?
I went with diplomat. So I've got.
Me too.
You did.
I was
We're
like,
the
I want to
same.
do I'm a
Yeah.
persuasive play, right? Like anything that's not combat possible. That's what I want.
Yeah, I really like doing the dialogue trees and playing the kind of persuasion like mini game and getting out of combat if you can. So I'm having a ton of fun with that. I'm also putting a lot into sneak and just movement abilities. But also, I mean, I'm enjoying the combat too. I think like the combat is really fun and like the shooting is solid and feels really heavy. And a lot of the guns are like really cool and fun. And like, it feels good to like, I'm doing a quest right now where I'm having to like fight a bunch of guys and just going through all the weapons that I have and picking the right ones, like, and just kind of swapping out on the go as I'm picking people off is like way more fun than I was anticipating.
It's such an improvement from Fallout. Like as far as, the guns are.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of ways in which, and I'll wrap this up here, but I think there's a lot of ways in which this is a step back from some other Bethesda games. Like it certainly, there is a lot of fast traveling. It's like fast travel is required, right, in this game. And it's like, you know, we're talking universe level shit. Like you're obviously not going to fly all the way across that, but it's like,
I mean, you could.
Yeah.
I think I've heard you can't though. Like if you try to like just like go to Pluto, like
you'll go right
like
through it. I did that. I flew to one of the moons
word.
in the orbit of a planet and I just went straight through it. Like it's a flat ping, you know?
Okay.
And it says I was there. It was like, you're 0 feet away. It's like, well, there's nothing here. It's like, it just disappears.
So you had to like fast travel, like go into the menu or something. Is that what?
Yeah. Then I just like jumped away, right? But no, it's I'm having a fucking blast. I'm gonna play more as soon as we finish recording this. I'm totally hooked. It's a very addicting game. It's keeping me up late at night. So I'm really enjoying it, and I recommend people check it out. Playing it mostly on my Xbox, and occasionally when I'm in bed, I'll stream it over Game Pass to my Steam Deck, and that's actually not been too bad, especially when I'm just kind of going planet to planet and doing dialogue trees and stuff like that, like which is a lot of the game. Like that's the kind of stuff that I like to do on my Steam Deck. A lot of the personalization, stuff like that. But yeah, great game. I really enjoy it. I can't wait to play more. And if anybody's playing and they want to talk about it, this is a great game to like share stories on. But anyway, Summer, what about you? What have you been playing?
Yeah, so I, of course, also played Splatfest this weekend, did a little bit of everything, like all of the different modes. Also, like, just with all of the, like, Mario Wonder hype, we jumped back into Super Mario 3D World a little bit this weekend, just, you know, for funsies. Realized I haven't beaten it, so, like, we just, like, it's a good, like, household let's all like sit down and play this together game. And I did start Starfield. I think I'm going to need to get through more of Baldur's Gate 3, to be perfectly honest, before I fully intend to keep playing Starfield. Like I made my character, I got through like the opening and everything. But good God, I started Baldur's Gate 3 first. My goal is to try to get through them, you know, before the Game Awards. 'Cause I'm like, I gotta play all of these. There's so many titles that I'm actually invested in that are probably up for Game of the Year this year, and I'm like excited for it. Like I realize half of it is just commercials, and like that's the point of it. But like the fact that we have like celebration of being a gamer, and like I'm gonna care about probably more than half the titles this year is kind of cool.
You should definitely come down for a big. We should have a big party for the Game Awards this year.
It would be if it wasn't on a Thursday, but maybe we could do something, online.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm just getting back into gaming though for the most part. Still playing Pokemon TCG. Honest to God, I'm trying to finish my collection, and then maybe I'll be satisfied. Last I checked, I had 211 cards. I think the total is 226.
Oh damn! Yeah, you've stuck with it more than me after the end game.
Oh, this is the issue. I mean, I loved it when I was a kid. This is how I get, man. Yeah, I just get this way. And I say that, right? Pokemon's just got like a grip on me because like I put the Pokemon Scarlet cartridge back into my Switch because I was dicking around in Pokemon Go and Pokemon Home, realizing, do I want to get back into my living decks and trying to put that together. And every so often I get an itch that's like, yes, you're going to replay this one specific game and you're going to import all of the Pokemon into the bank. And I don't know. I see a lot of people that I know that are getting back into competitive, and I'm like, this looks fun. Maybe I want to do that. More on that next week as to whether I actually open Pokemon Scarlet or not. I'll probably open it and then get sick of what it looks like and then close it again.
Yeah. Vince, what about you? What have you been playing?
So speaking of Pokemon, I've been playing a little bit of Pokemon Sword Shield because my son is doing a Nuzlocke on his file. And he's 9. But he's subverting the rules a little. He's asking me to go farm like leaf stones for him to evolve his Pokemon. So he's kind of breaking the Nuzlocke rules, but
whose idea was the Nuzlocke? His or yours?
His. He watches Nuzlocks constantly on YouTube. Like I make randomizers for him on like the DS. Like you can go get like a randomizer online, and then you have like the little like ROM cartridge, like the R4 cards. And so I make little randomizers for him. I just give him like fuck all weird like starters for him to just go and like put in the ears, and like he goes through them. He beats them. He beat Sun before when he was 3, just by following like the super effectives and the going to the waypoints. Like he's a little savant with Pokemon. He'll beat every Pokemon game. The DLC is out the day this comes out. He'll beat it by Friday, I'm sure. So we're doing that. So I've been playing a little bit of farming for his Nuzlocke. And then I finished up Ghost Trick, which is great. It's the adventure game from the Ace Attorney team. And it's like a fun little ghost story. It came out for Switch and Steam Deck, maybe some other systems, but it's just a really, really solid mystery that I've not seen. Like the way it puts out its reveals is really, really well done. So I've been very happy with that. And then I started Sea of Stars, but it's not grabbing me, but I'll give it some more time. I'm so sorry.
I started it too, but there's just too many games right now.
I know. So I know that you mentioned stuff on the Game Awards. I feel like it's getting a lot of like Game of the Year hype. So I want to see through it. It's now that it's let me do some battles, I'm much more into it than just like the first like hour of like story. So
it definitely picks up once you start getting to do the battles.
Yeah. Battles are really, really fun.
Yeah.
So, it's finally starting to pick up. And then I've just been playing that Picross Sega Master System 1. I'm almost through.
Hell yeah.
Like I don't like the Mega one. Whatever's the second thing, I don't like that one as much. It breaks my brain. But the main one, I'm on the last page. I've got like 4 or 5 puzzles left of the 20 by 15s. You can follow my progress in Picross Headz.
You'll come around to Mega Picross eventually. Yeah. We all do eventually. It took me a long time, and now I'm into it.
Nice. Just so excited that 3D Picross was announced at the Direct today.
Yo, Picross 3D 3 into it. Let's go.
Yes. In VR, they're releasing a VR helmet for the Switch for Picross 3D, and that's it.
Oh God.
That's. I still think that's what Switch 2 is going. Oh, we'll talk about that.
All right. Well, that's gonna do it then for this episode on Nintendo's eras and the changing Nintendo. Thank you so much, Vincent, for coming and talking with us.
Absolutely.
Thanks to MilkyWay.co for doing our website. Thanks to Corduroy for doing our music. If you're looking for me, Patrick Online, I am PDYX.
I am Weeb Witched just about everywhere online.
I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, Vince? Where can people find you online?
You can find me as Cool Uncle Vince on the Nintendo Switch Headz Discord. You can find me on Twitter, but I don't tweet ever. And then you can also find me at the podcast Some of My Friends Read Comics. We cover a monumental comic every other week. This week we're going through about Swamp Thing by Alan Moore. But we've also covered, yes, fucking good. We've covered things in the past, and Crisis on Infinite Earths, The Death of Gwen Stacy, Death of Aunt May, classic comic books. We've been going for about 8 years now. So come check us out. Some of my friends read comics.
There you go. Check out the podcast. Check out Vince on the Discord. If you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Switch Headz on Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Instagram and Facebook. We got a website, switchheads.com. And join us on the Discord, man. We got a Discord and a Facebook group. We got links to both of those in the description of this episode, be it on YouTube, or Apple or Spotify, wherever. Click those links. Join us in the community. We'd love to have you there. It's a non-toxic group of wonderful people that are very inviting and love to play Splatoon together and talk about bullshit. That's going to do it on this episode. Be sure to tune in next week when we for sure definitely are covering the Nintendo Direct September edition 2023. I don't know. We'll see. But other than that, gang, you know the drill. Stay safe out there. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Go watch the Castlevania trailer again, man. That shit was pretty fucking hype. But other than that, we love you very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.